What is up? It's Friday, it's June 6th, 2025, and here's what I've been juggling over the last couple of weeks. So, number one, it's official. I think I've talked about it, but it's happening and it's happening sooner or quicker than I would like. But we're moving back to the Bay Area after having spent the last 5 years in Central California. Two, the forever home that we gutted and remodeled and we've been living in for the last few years, we are turning that into an Airbnb. So I'll touch on that. For three, Oakstone, our boutique resort, we have started phase one of the rehab. We're making some changes to the overall rehab process and the phases, which I think is going to benefit us as well as some of the initial investors. And let's see, number four, I'm wrapping up week three since I officially signed the developer agreement with Floor Coverings International. And then another sort of item here is, Jazzy is also sort of thinking a little bit about, hey, once we move, what is she going to spend, the majority of her time on outside of, continuing to run the property management business that we have now. So I've been helping her trying to pressure test some different ideas and concepts as well. For the deep dive, while getting the new franchise business up and running is, of course, sort of the biggest thing that I need to think about and probably the largest priority on top of all the other things we're juggling. I've been getting a lot of questions around Airbnbs, right? So for most of the people that know me, we have a good amount of Airbnbs, and of course, where we live now, that's what we've been doing and focusing on, and it's been a big part of our income and part of our portfolio and investment strategy for the last 5 years. And so, as I've shared a little bit more about doing some other things, lots of people are like, "Hey, what's going on with your Airbnbs? Why not?" And I think a lot of people have questions around how I got started on that and just my general thoughts on that today. So I think I'll do the deep dive on that. But let's jump in. Okay, so moving back to the Bay. So it's happening quick. We put the primary house that we're living in right now on Airbnb. We got it listed. We had the photos, and the first guests. We put a timeline, of course, for ourselves, and we needed to make money, and so the summer is, of course, prime. So we have our first guest coming next Friday, June 12th. We are still in the house today. We have not finalized packing, so we literally have until I would say probably Tuesday, Wednesday to pack up everything and get out of this house, because we still need probably a good 2 to 3 days of like final deep cleaning and actually getting the house ready for the guests that are going to come, right? We can't afford to have any negative reviews with with the sort of the size and sort of the listing for this property. We're hoping that it's going to do really, really well. I mean, it should do really, really well, but we need to make sure that we're providing a super, super stellar experience for everybody that's showing up. So there's a ton of pressure trying to get this ready. We have not found the house that we're going to be moving into yet. As I've been sharing, we've been looking at the East Bay, specifically, I think the Danville, San Ramon area. Jazzy started looking into the schools, and so we've spent some time on that and really want to make sure that we're prioritizing neighborhoods and communities where we think it's going to be really good for the kids. So we are actively, asking to submit applications or submitting applications. We're kind of in a spot where I don't think we need to necessarily go look at a house in person. Assuming the photos do the property and the house justice, we're comfortable with the locations, we're comfortable with the schools that we've decided on, and so now it's just a matter of trying to figure out, who's going to be allowing us to rent the house sight unseen. I spoke to somebody today that basically said, they need somebody, to come visit the house. They want to meet them. They are having an open house tomorrow. With us moving, we're not going to be able to make the open house. And, they said they have 9 other interested people lined up for a showing tomorrow. So it's feeling a bit competitive. And then, I think our financials are pretty good, but if I put myself in their shoes, I can also see that now that I don't have that W-2 income, what am I showing, right? And I've talked about this as well, which is a real strategy is, I'm telling people and I'm putting on the application that, yeah, we're business owners and investors. And if they want to ask about business financials, I'm going to show them that we're not really profitable. We're not making a lot of money, right? Those are some of the owner benefits that I've talked to about. So it might get a little bit tricky, but I'm sure we'll find a way around it, especially if we're showing bank statements. So um, we will be renting an Airbnb until we get that squared away. I did plan ahead, and so we've got an Airbnb in Fresno. Technically, check-in date is actually tomorrow, so we'll still be at our house now. We have that rental for a month. If we need more time, then I'm sure we can find another Airbnb or maybe extend that one as well. So we should be okay. Okay, Oakstone. So our original plan, and I'll try to be quick on this one too, but our original plan was it was going to be in 2 phases, and for each phase we would have a set of investors. For phase one, we were targeting $1 million in total capital raised, and just to be clear, that is also coming from myself and the other managing partners, right? And so for anybody that's interested in private equity or looking at different pitch decks from people, you want to make sure that the people that you might invest with, that the people that are either going to be building the concept or running the concept, owning the concept, that they have skin in the game. And so between myself and my 4 partners, we've each put in $100,000. So that's $500,000 of that initial capital. So that's 50% skin in the game for us, right? So that's quite a lot of money. So we're very confident in this project. We wanted to also do that because that allows us to retain more ownership and not have to give away some of the profit and some of the ownership to others as well. For phase two, which was going to be the larger rehab, the complete rehab of the entire property, we were going to need to do a good amount of capital calls for that, potentially somewhere around $3 to $3.5 million. And we were likely going to start accepting that money later this year or maybe early next year. We were hoping to begin phase two of the rehab perhaps late this year, early next year, so that it could maybe be ready for summer of 2026. That's just not going to happen, right? So I think everything we thought that this might happen as well, where, working with the county and getting our plans approved, that's going to take some time. And where we've shifted our thinking a little bit now is we are likely going to take some of the items that we were going to have in phase two. And maybe one way of looking at it was phase one was going to be a very small portion of rehab. It was going to be super lightweight over the next couple of months. And then we would just do that, and we would get the property online and just run it for this summer to test it. And then end of this year would sort of, like I just said, start phase two, and that would be the bulk of it. Now, what we think might actually work better is we're going to take phase one and actually expand it. So some of the stuff that we were hoping to do from phase two, we're going to move it into phase one. We're going to target getting this property profitable, cash flowing really, really well, not just for this summer, but through the end of this year. And if we can do some additional rehab things sort of as the property's even online and we don't have to take it offline, we're hoping that it's going to be good enough to where we might be able to continue to use the profits to reinvest. So as we go, so as we make more money, we reinvest it. As that increases our revenue, we reinvest that. Which means if we can continue doing that, we're now thinking we might be able to set ourselves up for a really strong summer 2026, even through phase one. Meaning, once we get out of summer 2026, we're going to do a reevaluation where we might not even go to additional investors for phase two. So the initial capital, we've got some friends and family that have already signed up. There might still be a couple of spots left. So if anyone's interested in investing in something like this, just ping me directly and I can share more details. I can share the pro forma and you can kind of see how that's going to play out. But we're pretty excited about the fact that we might not need as many investors as we thought before, which again allows us to retain more of ownership, which I think also then will help some of the early investors that would invest in phase one. One thing that we changed was that we were going to have phase two investors coming in at $200,000 minimum to get preferred status. And if somebody came in at lower than $200,000, they would get general status. We're now also going to be giving anyone that invests in phase one, even if they're just coming in at $50,000, which is the floor, we're giving them preferred status as well. So some good benefits for people getting in early, and we're pretty excited about that. And just to share a little bit too in terms of like how things are even playing out now. We just closed on the property, I think, 2-3 weeks ago now. And there's a 7-unit building that has Airbnb units. None of those 7 rooms have bathrooms in them. They essentially just have a men's and a women's bathroom in the building, but not individually in each of those rooms. We were going to take a couple of months as part of phase 1 to actually, do the rehab there and get them so that each bedroom, we're going to flip it, turn it into 8 bedrooms with individual bathrooms. Well, through some channels, since all of us on the managing partner team have experience out here, somebody hit somebody up and said, "Hey, can you guys have any people staying at your houses? We have some people that are coming in from doing some fire safety work, and they're coming up and they're relocating, and the company essentially is going to be paying for their lodging, assuming it's affordable." So they pinged us. Well, we told them about these units that we have, and long story short on that, they signed an agreement. So they're looking for something that's probably 12-month, like a 12-month lease. We basically just said, hey, look, what we can do is we can start with a 3-month. If it works out good, we can go and extend. We also said in the agreement that, hey, if you guys are coming up Monday through Thursday, taking off Friday, we need you to check out Thursday morning. They agreed to that as well. So we have the 7 units already rented out practically day 1 for 3 months, could be for the whole year. And it's only Monday through Thursday, which is also most of the times that it's harder to get 100% occupancy. And in the contract allows us to, of course, then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, utilize those as true Airbnbs to rent out. So something positive already happening there. Okay, on Floor Coverings International. So even though I'm wrapping up week 3, not a lot has necessarily happened. I don't know if that's good or bad. Like, I feel like the pace is slower, but because of all the things I'm juggling, I actually like it. Now, what I have been focusing on, and I should mention too that even though I signed up, it's a big established brand. I've already talked about it. There were other people that signed up right around the same time as me. And there are other people that signed up perhaps, a week or 2 or 3 before me. And for the people that signed up around the same time as me, we're grouped. So I think there are 3 other people that are in the same training sort of group as me, where we all have a grand opening date set for September 1st. And so now, from now until September 1st, there's a lot of things that have to go through. I got to go to Atlanta 2 separate weeks, mid-July, mid-August for training. But a lot of the other stuff that we have to do is, we're doing it from home. And so for the last couple of weeks or so, the first items on all of our checklists have been like, look, you got to get your business entity set up, which I've already talked about. You want to make sure you get your funding lined up, which I have talked about as well. You got to get a warehouse and an office, right? You got to shop around for that and sign a lease. I'm taking over a lease from somebody else, and so I'm working through those details. And you got to make sure you got your bank accounts set up, and then you also need business, and this varies by state, right? So sales permits and licenses, and business permits and licenses as well. So those are the things I'm working through, but that's more of a checklist, and I'm trying to navigate it, not something that's this major thing that I got to make some big decisions on. So, cool. The new business for Jazzy. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that. I think it's, the property management company, it's in a good place. Jazzy's got some people she's working with there, which I think I've talked about quite a bit around. And it's in a good place. I mean, it's challenging. It's hard work, but she's managing that. And now that we're moving, I think she's kind of thinking of like, hey, does she want to take on something as well? And so any idea she has, anybody she reaches out to have a conversation with, I'm kind of jumping into that as well, since I've got a good amount of experience in pressure testing various ideas and concepts. So it's one of those things where I'm not trying to spend too much time on it, since I don't have a lot of time, but I also need to keep that top of mind so that we're sort of partnering as much as possible. All right, cool. Well, let's get to the deep dive, and let me share my general thoughts on the STR market, right? So STR, that is short-term rentals. VR, which technically is vacation rentals, but also virtual reality. So we'll stick to STRs. Um, Here's where I think it's headed. So I think it's quite challenging for anybody that is new trying to get into this. And I think the reasons, and I mentioned this, the reasons I keep getting all these questions around it is because we've been growing our portfolio, right? And I said it, like we're taking our primary residence and we're folding it into the portfolio as well. And so they're asking like, well, wait a minute, if you just bought a house and you're turning your primary into an STR, like how can I get in on that? Like it seems like it's doing really, really well for you guys and you have a lot of properties that are doing really well. So here's the way that I would sort of talk this through. I have been trying to get into real estate investing for a really, really, really long time, like 10, 15 years. And every time I tried to figure out how, I always kind of got stuck where, if all you have is enough money for a down payment, and you try to go with as little down payment as possible, then when you go the long-term rental route, generally, unless people, have ways of figuring out how to buy something, at a huge discount, or they have maybe a market that just works really well. I think in general, most people would say that, yeah, you get into a long-term rental property, and what happens is those renters, they cover your mortgage. It's not like you're making a ton of money passively that's going in your pocket, right? And even then, you're probably paying a property management company unless you're trying to do it on your own. And so then it's for sure, it's not, if you're doing it on your own, then it's not passive income. So I couldn't find a way to get into real estate. When Jazzy and I, not so much met, but when we met, we were always looking at different business ideas and concepts to get into. And, she brought up real estate as well. She had some friends that were investing in real estate. And we kind of went back and forth similarly. Like we just couldn't find an angle, couldn't find a way to get in where it was going to be a business. Like we were going to be making a lot of money. So we did some other things. And a good friend of mine, ours, Peter, we were actually looking to get into a business and partner with him on something. And then, after spending a lot of time together looking at concepts, he pulled out. He's like, hey guys, yeah, no, I just bought an investment property, so I'm good for now. We were kind of like, all right. We were busy doing something else either way, so we didn't think too much of it. Jazzy and I were having a conversation one day, and the real estate thing came back up, and we were kind of going back and forth, a little healthy debate. And, I told her, I'm like, I just don't see it. I don't see how we can do it. And she was mentioning a few different ideas, right? Like, oh, you can go next to a university and you can have people double up on rooms and, different things that she knew some other people were doing. And, I just, maybe at the time, like, I didn't really like that idea, that concept. I didn't see it working. And she's like, well, if it doesn't work, then why did Peter just buy a house? And it just hit me. And I was like, that's a really good question. So I called Peter right away, spent 30 minutes on the phone, and he basically told me he just bought a house in Mariposa, right outside of Yosemite National Park. And as we're talking, I didn't even know where Mariposa was. Of course, I knew of Yosemite National Park, didn't realize that Mariposa was right outside. He walked me through the financials and the details. He also shared that another common friend of ours had been doing it for 5 years and had 5 properties out there, and basically said he was printing money. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, really? So Jazzy and I started doing research, started looking into it, and turns out that at that time, and we're talking, I think, probably late 2018, and at that time, it seemed not like it was too good to be true. Like we were looking at different websites, we were looking at Airbnb, VRBO, we were looking at top properties, we were looking at calendars, we were looking at nightly rates. We ran a ton of research, and then at the time, and still today, there's a website called Airbnb, and they generally publish data on vacation rentals. If you go there and you pay their monthly fee, then you can search for zip codes and cities, and you can slice and dice various data, right? It'll give rankings on cities. It'll tell you what the top properties are, which ones they are, the links to them, and how much money they generally generate. So everything seemed to line up. So we bought our first vacation rental property in Mariposa in 2019. We originally wanted to go and spend a good amount of time to actually do the rehab, and I'll share this too. When we looked at Airbnb, I think what we saw was that in Mariposa, there was X number of properties. The majority of them are what I would consider sort of mom and pop, right? It was somebody had a house, maybe an extra house. Either they bought it, and I'll include even my buddy Steve, looking at his properties. You know, it seemed like he would go buy a house, and if he could buy it with the furniture in there at a discount, he would do that, and he would go get professional photos done. But there was no real cohesive design on the properties. If he could get by with some light rehab touch-up stuff just to make the property presentable, he would. But there wasn't a lot of competition in the market at that time. So even with the houses that he had, simply by just having professional photographs and being super responsive, he was doing really, really well. The majority of the properties had horrible furniture, didn't even have professional photography. The photos would be like of a deer, right? Not even the house, like just random stuff that we would look at and go like, how are these people making money? When we were looking at AirDNA, we looked at the top properties. The common theme was the top 10 properties in Mariposa basically looked like the houses had been somewhat remodeled, and they generally had a cohesive design, almost as if somebody went in and just bought a bunch of brand new matching furniture from one place with an eye for design and put it together with professional photography and adding some amenities, right? Pool table, hot tubs, you know, even fixing up some of the landscaping in the outdoor patio areas. And they were all generally doing, on average, between $90,000 and $100,000 a year in revenue, right? So yes, one property making $100,000 a year in revenue. You go get a long-term rental property and you run the numbers, you're not gonna, you know, I mean, sure, depending on the size of the house and where it's located, you might be able to do that. But for a regular, at the time, we'll say a $350,000 to a $400,000 house in Mariposa in the mountains was making, you know, $100,000 in revenue. Now, you got to factor in, and I'm not going to spend too much time on that right now, but you got to factor in the operating expenses. Running that as an Airbnb, you're paying the utilities, right? You're paying the insurance. You're paying all of the operating expenses, and that is a lot higher on an STR than a long-term rent. But if you can figure out how to squeeze those margins and make those margins work for you, that's where the money is. So anyways, we bought our first house and we just knew right away we were going to spend a good amount of time and money on the rehab. We were going to come in brand new furniture and really try to just mimic. And there was no doubt that, hey, if we followed the right systems and, you know, we had the right plans in place, that we weren't also going to be producing top 10% properties or top 10 properties, which then we figured in, great, if I'm buying it at, you know, at this, well, actually the first house, I'll just use it. The one we bought in 2019, I think we bought it for $432,000. I think we got it at probably a flat 3% interest rate. And I think I bought it with 10% down. We bought it as a second home, a vacation home that we were only going to be using. So didn't buy it as an investment property. And maybe I'll touch on that in another one for people that are interested in how to sort of buy real estate with little to no money down. But anyways, so we bought that one. We spent the time on rehab. We bought the furniture. And guess what? Right before we went live on market in early 2020, COVID hit, right? We weren't even allowed to rent it out. I got a call from my boss at the time saying, hey, you know what? No need for you to come to work next week, right? We're going to play it by ear. We'll let you know when you got to come to the office. I mean, it pretty much happened with everybody. So we said, okay. Well, at the time we were living in Walnut Creek, and we said, why stay in Walnut Creek? Why don't we just go stay at our property, which is on 5 acres in Mariposa? And so we went out there, stayed there, ended up sort of staying there, I think, for 6 months or so before some of the restrictions started to get lifted, where we actually could rent it out. So while we were getting ready to rent it out, we were already confident based on the work that we had done and the numbers we had. Like I said, we had a few friends. We'd met a couple of other friends now by the time we were out there that were doing something similar and or had the experience already before we got out there. And everybody was saying the same thing. If you know what you're doing, it's going to work, and it's going to work incredibly well. Cool. So we said, instead of moving back to Walnut Creek, why don't we buy another house and do the same thing? So we did. So we bought a second house. We moved into that one and spent months rehabbing that one, getting that one ready while we rented out the first one we bought. The first one started doing incredibly well. As soon as that happened, we said, ooh, we got to go get another one. So we went and picked up 2 more properties. I think by the end of 2021, we had 4 properties out here. I think all of them, on average, the second house we bought it for $400,000. The third house we bought it for 380, and I think the fourth property, I think we got it for maybe like 360, right? So the prices at the time were pretty good, at least in terms of what we were thinking. I also think all of those were bought probably around low 3% interest rate, and that's including, I think, a couple of them at 10% down payments. Um, so fast forward, I think we've bought 7 properties just for short-term rentals in Mariposa up until now. 2 of them last year were doing really well, but we had equity in the house, so we did a 1031 exchange. We sold 2 of them and converted those to 4 long-term rentals in Las Vegas. And then just this year, right as I was sort of being impacted at Meta, I said, okay, cool. Well, I've got pay stubs, so let me take advantage. So we picked up 1 more short-term rental property, and it just went on the market on Airbnb about a month ago. And then now, like I said, we're putting our primary residence up on Airbnb, and we've got guests coming next week. Now, here are the differences between when we started and where we are today, and why I wouldn't recommend somebody starting their own sort of Airbnb short-term rental portfolio unless they know what they're doing, they've got some experience, or perhaps there is something else that is working in their favor that, who knows, right? Maybe someone's going to gift them a house and they have to, they can't sell it or they have to do something. So the first thing I'll touch on, because I've already shared a little bit, is, we bought some of those homes, the original ones, around the $400,000 mark or less, right? And we were at the 3% interest rate. You look at it today on investment properties, right? They're probably still somewhere, maybe could you get them at the high 6s, low 7s? If you're talking investment properties, that's going to be higher than a primary residence or personal property. And so you're probably going to be in the, at best, low 7s. So if you're talking a double interest rate, you're talking double the mortgage. A simple way of looking at it is, if I thought that any one of my houses was going to do, $30,000 or $40,000 a year in profit, gross profits, and before taxes, cool. You take your mortgage payment, and if you had a mortgage payment of, $2,500, and you double it, or actually, I'm not going to do that math right now. So let's say your mortgage payment was just $2,000, right? Well, if you now had to have a double mortgage payment, and that's $4,000, that's $2,000 extra you'd be paying today versus back then. That's $24,000 a year. That's $24,000 in lost margin, right? And then you factor in that the house, and I'll share the value too. So the house that we bought, the new one we picked up a couple of months ago, that one we bought at $650, right? So that's a huge jump from the $400,000 homes we're buying to buy at $650. Now, it's a really nice house. It's got a pool. And so I think that's a little bit different, but still, even without that, the properties that I think would be similar to ours would probably be somewhere around the 550 to 600 mark either way. So the property values have definitely increased over the last 5 years. And so that means your down payment, the capital needed, is going to be increased, right? And then that also means your loan is going to be bigger. So you're going to have a bigger loan plus the interest rate. So I think the margins, it's a lot harder to be able to get the kinds of margins that a lot of people got a few years ago, right? Now, the second thing, it's the competition. Now, there's 2 types of competition, unfortunately. On one hand, you've got COVID. When COVID happened and everybody wanted to get out of the cities and the highly densely populated areas, most people, that were able to travel or wanted to travel, and even after a lot of restrictions, they got in their car and they wanted to get out. So they drove places, right? Mariposa and some of these other places, great places to go. So not only did our revenue shoot up quite a bit in, tail end of 2020, also in 2021. For 2021, I think for 2020, there was no international travel. I think in 2021, for a good amount of time, there wasn't a lot of international travel either way, right? And so people are kind of forced to travel locally or get in the cars and drive to places. Um, well, at the same time, that's when people said, wait a minute, if I can just get in my car and drive to these places, I want to get out of the city. Why don't I just buy a vacation home? So we saw a huge increase in the number of people buying vacation homes. We saw that throughout all of 2021 and all of 2022, right? A lot of those people converted those homes into Airbnbs. So we saw a major spike. 2022 and 2023 coming out of it, we saw 2 to 3 times as many Airbnbs in the market, right? So the revenue, and just to give you some numbers too, like in 2021, the average property that we had on the 4 properties that I mentioned first, we probably did like $130,000 for each house. That's a lot of revenue for one house, right? Um, and then you fast forward to today, those properties, same ones, are back down to sort of the $100,000 revenue mark. So that's a huge drop. That almost says like, okay, cool. So we're back to what I was targeting pre-COVID when I first got in. With the big difference being our properties are rehabbed and they're really nice, right? I would like for them to do a lot better, but now we're talking about competition. You've got 2 to 3 times as many properties. I would think it's pretty hard for somebody to go out there today and find some sort of an untapped market, right? I think most people over the last couple of years now that Airbnbs, it's been a big thing. Airbnb and VRBO, they pushed hard on marketing, advertising. I think they both probably had spots at the Super Bowl this year. But either way, yeah, there's lots of travel, but there's lots of competition, right? So the first piece is you just have way more Airbnbs and VRBOs that were acquired. They were purchased as a vacation property to be a short-term rental, right? Then there's a second piece to the competition, and that is Airbnb and VRBO. They are trying to obviously figure out how they can increase their revenue, right, and their market share. So with all the advertising and the marketing that they're doing, a lot of it behind the scenes is focused on getting the homeowners out there to add your properties to Airbnb or for people to build the business, right? So they're going to tell you all the great things about being an Airbnb host, right? But essentially what they're doing, and this sucks for me and for the other people that are the actual hosts, by them going out and trying to increase their market share and trying to add as many homes as possible to their portfolio, well, yeah, that increases the competition. What they're trying to do, and maybe, and of course I don't work there, so I don't know the inside of what they're saying, but on the one hand, they want to be competitive with hotels, right? So they're moving into that space and they're thinking like, look, if we can offer lower rates and be competitive with hotels, that's good for them. So the more houses they have on the market in their portfolio, the better for them. That's the opposite. The more houses there are on the market, that's worse for me, right? Because then I have to reduce my rates. So I'm now, for the last few years, going down from when like international travel opened up, great, we saw a reduction in demand. Then we saw a spike in the competition and we saw more people coming onto the market with their homes. And then we're seeing still yet, even last year, more and more homes coming onto the market, more competition, in a large part due to Airbnb and VRBO pushing for that as well. One other piece that, some I don't know if you call it like cities, communities, counties, you name it, they've been dealing with this for a while. So if you've already been reading, like it's been popping up all the time where the regulations are increasing. So for example, right, New York, I think New York, they banned short-term rentals. And a lot of that came from the hotels lobbying saying like, hey, it's not good. And then you had a lot of, other sort of communities and neighbors saying that, hey, this isn't necessarily good for the community. And so New York pretty much just said, okay, got it, right? Went through some voting process and guess what? They banned it. Airbnbs are illegal in New York, right? There's other counties. So where we live, if you go up to Tahoe, Lake Tahoe, great place. They had a spike in vacation rentals, and same thing. The local communities came out and said, hey, we don't like it. It's disruptive to the people that are living here every day. And so they put a bunch of rules and regulations in place. You've got a very stringent permit process. And I think there was a good number of people that got grandfathered in. But there were a lot of people that bought homes hoping they could do it and then said, nope, there's no more permits to go around. So tough. And then you simply have Napa. Napa, I think Napa County has like 50 permits allowed. They've had this for years. In order for anybody to be able to get an Airbnb in Napa, they have to either buy an existing house that's already an Airbnb from somebody and then take ownership of that permit, um, or they can add their name to the wait list. Not a lottery, it's a wait list, and it's a long wait list, right? Um, and now Mariposa has had some rules and regulations that we've had to follow in order to get a certificate or a permit that allows us to rent. We've been able to do that pretty easily to pass, right? And your house has to be up to code, right? And so there's plenty of homes that aren't up to code. So there's certain things you have to do if you have a swimming pool, if you have a second story, you have railings around the property. Your windows have to be a certain height off the ground so kids can jump out in case of a fire. So there's lots of things you have to go through, which I think is good. We want to make sure that the property is safe. Oakhurst, where we have our Oakstone Resort, and where actually the last property we bought is in Oakhurst, they have no regulations. Literally, you buy a house, I don't care what it is, and you just put it on and you can have it rented the next day, right? Even with Mariposa, they regulate, hey, if you have 3 bedrooms, you can sleep 6 people. If you have 4 bedrooms, you can't sleep 8 people. They won't let you advertise more than 3 bedrooms. They don't want people to overcrowd homes. And most properties are on a septic system. So your septic system has to be up to code and be able to support the number of bedrooms you have. Oakhurst, none of that. Just in the last 30 days, the county has been working with the local community to try to figure out if they're going to go ahead and start having some regulations. Conversations are underway. I've joined a couple of calls with a couple of one of the county supervisors did a live call, and there's been another sync, but they've actually got the Airbnb hosts, owners to join that to talk about what could the impact be. And of course, a good number of owners are freaking out. Probably because their properties maybe aren't up to code. But anyways, the point being here, lots more regulations to come, and who knows, that could continue to be something that gets a bit more stringent in the future. So if I summarize all of that, if you have experience, if there are ways for you where you can think of something where like, nope, I got a way to make this happen, that's great. That's cool. But I think it's really, really challenging for somebody today that doesn't have the experience to try to find the market, find the right house, get the right interest rate, and then be able to not just acquire that property, at a good price, but then be able to manage it, right? It is challenging. Now we're also seeing a lot of the guests, unfortunately, they're going online and they're finding ways of just complaining or doing certain things to get refunds. Airbnb and VRBO, they're taking the guests' side, 100% of the time. So we've had people come into a house and, we 100% know, I was just there, I just cleaned it. And then 10 minutes later, they look what we found. We found these hairs sitting somewhere. And we're like, no, we have photos. It's not. And they'll give the guest a full refund. So it's gotten to a place where it's incredibly challenging to make it really, really work. I think where we are is, hey, we still have those properties at low interest rates. And we're going to, and so our margins are a little bit better and we can handle the top line revenue coming down. Somebody's spending a lot of money to buy a new house today. I don't know how you're going to make the margins work. That's going to be really tough, especially if you're going to have to hire a property manager, right? For us, we charge 20% on the nightly rate and 100% on the cleaning fee. Jazzy runs our property management company full time, so that's her job, right? So I think that's really challenging. But I will say this, I'm more than happy to talk about this. If anyone's interested in learning more about Airbnbs, short-term rentals, or just real estate investing in general, hit me up. If you want to learn more about Oakstone and the boutique resort, hit me up. If you've got something that I didn't touch on or you disagree with something I said, feel free to comment and I'd be more than happy to sort of chat about it or see if there's something that I need to correct. Anyways, with that, I'm out.